Welcome to Art with Viv, and today we're going to do a cute winter penguin with watercolor. If you don't know who I am Viv, founder of Art with Viv, so let's just get started. Now I've already got my penguin sketched. I put a cute little toboggan on him, and yes, in the South we call that a toboggan. It's not a toque, it's not a beanie, it's not a stocking cap. Well, sometimes it's a stocking cap, but in the South, in North Carolina, that is a toboggan. Also put his little scarf around him and it's matching. First thing I'm going to do is just sort of mix up a nice blue-gray and right onto dry paper. I'm just going to do a wash. I don't care if it is not a smooth wash because I'm going to come back and put a few really pale clouds in there. So I'm not too concerned about it. I'm just putting on a nice wash of a nice blue-gray. Doing that right behind the penguin, right down to the snow, to the horizon line. So I'll let you watch and I'll be back in just a second. Now once you get that wash on, while it's still wet, get a paper towel, crunch it up, and just sort of dab out some of that blue. It makes it look like you have some clouds back there. They're just kind of subtle clouds. We're not going for the big cloud look. Then you're going to mix up a nice sort of dark gray color, and that's going to be his wings and sort of like his little tuxedo that he has on. You know how penguins have a tuxedo on. So we're going to mix up a nice dark. Once we get it nice and mixed up, we're just going to start painting his little tuxedo on. He is getting all dressed. He's probably going to go a-courting. He looks like he's about that age, and he's probably looking for a nice female penguin so they can go on a little fishing date maybe. I don't know. I don't know what penguins do for dates. I'm thinking they go fishing. That sounds plausible. But he's all dressed in his nice little black and white tux, and he's got his winter garb on to keep him warm. And we're just going to paint his little tux in with this dark gray. Now notice that I'm leaving it lighter in some areas and then just coming back and adding a little bit more of that darker paint in some areas to darken it up. We want a variation. We don't want it to be just a flat grayish black. We want it to have some lights and darks in it. I'm also coming back and lifting some of that up. See how I just take sort of a damp dry brush and I just lift some of the paint up. We're going to go ahead and paint in this wing. And I'm leaving just a tiny, tiny sliver of white between the wing and the body. I'm going to come back and paint that gray. But I want it to dry first because I want there to be a separation between his wing and his body. I don't want it to look like a big blob. So while it's still wet, I mixed up some more of this dark gray, and I'm going right back in while it's still wet and darkening up some of those areas to give it a little bit of variation. We want a little bit of light, we want a little bit of medium, we want a little bit of dark in his tux. We don't want it to be just one flat gray color. Now I went and got my little detail brush, and it is a 02. And I am going to paint around his eye, his iris, with this dark color that we used for his tuxedo, and around his eye. I'm leaving white in the center. I'm going to come back and paint that brown, and then of course the white of his eye. I'm getting a little bit of orange, and I am painting his beak with that orange. I'm concentrating it around the back part where it connects into his face, and then I'm just taking water and just sort of blending that out so that it'll be darker toward the face and lighter toward the point of the beak. And this is still wet, and I'm still picking up some of that color just so that we'll have some light areas. Now that wing is almost dried, so you see it looks a little streaky, but I'm just being brave and just picking it up and just smoothing it out, and it's going to be fine. Sometimes you just have to take a chance when you're painting. So now I'm going to paint in the iris of his eye, and I'm doing that with sort of a burnt sienna color, any kind of reddish brown, or you could have painted it all completely black. I just wanted to give it a little variation. I didn't want it to be black, so I went with brown. You do you. You want a blue-eyed penguin, go for it. It's all what you want in your vision. Now I'm going to paint the stripes in his scarf, and I'm painting them with a nice red, a nice Christmassy red. And what I'm doing is I'm painting a more concentrated mixture of the paint, a thicker mixture right around the edges of the stripe, and then I'm just dipping my brush into some water and taking and blending out that darker color to the center. I want the center to be lighter. You can also go in there and drop in just a little bit of clear water, and that will push that pigment out to the edge of that stripe if you drop that clear water right into the middle of the area. But as you see, I'm painting around the edges with it concentrated, rinsing my brush real quick, and then taking the clean water and just blending it toward the center so that it's darker around the edges and lighter in the center. And again, another trick you can do is just take a drop, just like I just did there, just dropping in a drop of clear water, and that will push that pigment out to the edges of the stripe, leaving the edges darker and the middle part lighter. All right, I'm gonna let you watch as I finish these stripes a little bit, and I'll be back just in a second. Once we get these stripes finished, we're going to get some yellow, and we're just going to do sort of a little base coat on his big fish flapping feet. He's got some big old feet. Penguins got some big feet, but I guess they need them to paddle them through the water. So, and also I think they carry their eggs on their feet to keep their eggs off of the snow. But they do have some quite large feet, and we're going to do that undercoat in yellow, and then just do some shadows while it's still wet. Just put in a little bit of orange where you want it to be darker. We're going to come back and clean that up. Don't worry about it. We're going to let that dry, and we're going to make some more stripes on that cap. And again, the same exact technique as the scarf. I'll let you watch, and I'll be back in just a second. Now once you get those stripes done, I think I might want to darken up some areas on his little tuxedo here. And you see I've painted right over that white stripe that we left between his arm and his body, and it still lets it have some separation, but it also shows you that it's all black, and it just makes sure that the arms stay separated without looking too, we don't want it to stay white. We wanted it to be gray. There you go. That's good enough. All right, now these feet, we're gonna come back and do a little bit more orange on the shadow parts. This time, we waited till they dried, so the orange isn't really mixing with the yellow. It's sitting on top of there, which is exactly what I want it to do. And I'm just sort of blending out his other arm, making sure it's a little darker toward the body and lighter toward the point of his arm. I'm gonna take a little bit more darker color around his beak and blend that out over that yellow. Now that it's dry, I picked up a little bit of it and I'm going to paint around the crown of his toboggan here. Not beanie, not toque, that's a toboggan. And we want it to be darker around the edges, so once I got that light wash of red, I'm just coming back in with a more concentrated red and dropping that in around the edges where I want it to be darker and letting it all blend out toward that lighter center part. Now I think he needs a little bit of green, so I'm just going to mix up a little bit of green here on my palette and take my tiny brush, the same one I used for his eyes, that 022 detail brush, and I'm just going to draw or paint some green stripes in between each one of those red stripes. I'm also getting a little bit of a darker green, and I am putting that toward the edges of the green stripes so that it'll have some lightness and darkness, even though they're really thin. It'll just give it a little bit more visual interest. You want your painting to be interesting, if nothing else. So we are going to continue with that, and we're also going to do the same thing to his hat. We're going to put green stripes in between each one of those red stripes. And that also gives a little contrast because red and green are complementary colors, so that'll make it pop out just a little bit. It'll be more pleasing to the eye when you use complementary colors, especially with all this black that we have in sort of neutral colors. He's a neutral color, the background's sort of a neutral blue color, so we need something that's just gonna catch our eye. Now I'm just taking a little bit of a darker red or a darker brown, it's up to you, and just separating that upper bill from that lower bill with a little line there. I am now making a little bit more of a sort of a grayish, beige-ish color, and that's going to be the shadows on his tummy, the shadows around his scarf, just to give his tummy so it's not just so white. We're going to break up all that white area on his tummy and add a little bit of shadow, and we want it to be sort of a beigey gray color. We don't want it to be too blue, we don't want it to be too brown, we want it to be sort of in between. So I've mixed that color up, and I am putting in the little shadow where his scarf is casting a shadow on his little white tummy, and across his feet where his fat folds are hanging over his feet. I put a little pale rose for a little bit of a blush on his cheek, and then a little bit of shadow area right under his chin, under his beak. And I'm just blending that out with some clean water now. All right, so now I'm going to take that blue, a little bit more concentrated than we used on the background, same color but just a little bit more of the paint on the brush, and make the fringes on his toboggan and on his scarf. So there we go, we're just getting that going, and we're not being too fussy with it, we're just making little brush marks. Now I'm taking a pale wash of orange and just going over his feet, just to sort of blend in the yellow and all of the shadows and everything. I'm getting a little bit of a darker color here for the shadows in his pom-pom. And I think he's starting to look cute now. Very, very cute. I'm just darkening up some of those shadows. Some of his red bled onto his chest, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to put a little shadow underneath there, underneath his feet, underneath him. He's casting a little bit of a shadow. Across the snow, we don't want the snow to just be too white either. We need to break up some of that white space. Now I'm just taking a little bit of white gouache, or maybe that is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, and I'm just adding some highlights to his eye, to his scarf fringes, and to his toboggan little pom-pom up there, just to give it a little bit more of a pizzazz. And I'm just dotting the background. You can splatter if you want. I'm not in a splattering mood, so I'm just dotting the background with some white. It's totally optional, just to give it a look of snow. He might be might be snowing on him, but I don't want to get white dots on him, so I'm just putting it in the background. This is more like an illustration anyway. I'm not trying to make it look too realistic. I just want something cute, something wintry, and there we go. We've let most everything dry. Now I'm just coming back in right along the edges of the scarf, and I'm adding a little bit of that blue for the shadow along the edges of the white stripes of the scarf, so that they don't look so flat. It gives them a little bit of dimension. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but in person it looks really nice to have that shadow going across those edges of the white stripe, so that the white stripes look a little bit more dimensional. So we are almost finished. I think he has really turned out really cute. He is ready for his date. He is going to go find Mama Penguin, and they are probably going to go fishing, or whatever penguins do on dates. I don't know. Who knows? They know. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share this with someone you think would enjoy it, and don't forget to follow me. I will see you next Monday.